Hello everyone. So today we're going to be talking about physical versus chemical properties. So your topic for today is physical and chemical properties. And your goal, I can label if something is a chemical or physical property. So first off, we're going to talk about the physical properties of matter. Now remember, while we are taking notes, if something is red, then you need to have that word or two words highlighted, and then everything that is underlined also needs to be in the notes section on this page of your digital notebook. Okay, so when we talk about physical properties, so you'll type out physical properties and then highlight it. We are discussing what we can observe or measure without changing the sample's composition. So you do need to make sure to write down that definition as well. Okay, so talking about physical properties, you're talking about what you can see, hear, smell, taste, feel, like basically your five senses. It's also what you can measure, like your volume, mass, density, etc. So often scientists use the following descriptions for physical properties, and I do recommend writing these descriptions down as well in your notes section. Okay, so your density, your hardness, your color, your odor, the melting point, and the boiling point. So those are the different physical properties. Okay, there are two types of physical properties, and you do need to know both of these types. First, you have your extensive properties. They are dependent on the amount of substance, like your mass, your volume, your length. Okay, so the next thing is kind of the opposite. It's intensive properties. Those are independent from the amount of substance present. And you can remember that. Intensive, independent. They both start with IM. Okay, so that's like your color, your density, your smell, things that do not change no matter how much you have. Okay, so which properties are extensive and which are intensive? Okay, so here it says, I have a sheet of copper in my storage closet. It has a volume of 16 inches cubed and a mass of 24 grams. Copper is a metal that has low hardness, high ductility, conducts electricity, has a density of 8.96 grams per centimeters cubed. The melting point is 1984.32 degrees Fahrenheit. The boiling point is 4643 degrees Fahrenheit. The color of the metal is usually a reddish-orange color when not exposed to oxygen. However, if the substance comes into contact with oxygen, it will likely turn a greenish color. All right, so on my piece of paper, we are going to do two columns, an extensive and an intensive. Now, if you remember, extensive depends on the amount. That's your mass, your volume, your length. Your intensive deals with it's independent of the amount, like your color, your density, and your smell. So density, it is a number. It is grams per centimeters cubed. And yes, it's an amount, but density is basically talking about whether it floats or sinks. So like a rock, it doesn't matter if you have a little pebble or if you have a big boulder, it's going to sink either way. So yes, density is a number, but it is included in the intensive properties. All right, so let's look at this list and we'll jump back and forth with this piece of paper. So I have a sheet of copper in my storage closet. It has a volume of 16 inches cubed. Okay, so volume, that has to do with the amount. So it would be extensive. So 16 inches cubed. And a mass of 24 grams. Well, that also has to do with the amount. So that would be extensive. 24 grams. Okay, copper is a metal that has low hardness. So first off, metal. Does it being a metal have anything to do with how much we have? No. So that would be intensive. So the fact that it's a metal is intensive. The fact that it has low hardness is intensive. The fact that it's high ductility, which that basically means you can bend it to whatever shape you need it to be. That is intensive. Conducts electricity is also intensive. That has nothing to do with the amount you have. A density of 8.96 grams per centimeter cube. Now remember density. That's whether it floats or whether it sinks. Does that have to do with the amount? Remember I talked about the little pebble versus the boulder. It doesn't. So that is actually intensive. So don't get that confused with like your mass. Okay, the melting point is 1,984.32 degrees Fahrenheit. Now melting point, an ice cube. Whether you have an ice cube as big as your house or the little ice cube that's in your freezer, once it gets above that melting point, ice is going to melt no matter how much you have. So since that does not depend on the amount, that will be intensive. So melting point is intensive. And that also means boiling point will be intensive. The color of the metal is reddish orange color when not exposed to oxygen. However, if the substance comes into contact with oxygen, it'll likely turn a greenish color. So color will be intensive. Okay, so looking at the list, you can see how most of the properties we talked about are intensive because it does not have to do with the amount. The only ones that are extensive is the volume and the mass. All right, so that's physical properties. Now we are going to move forward to chemical properties. So make sure you do top this in your notes section. Chemical properties are the ability of a substance to combine with or change into one or more other substances, and that is called a chemical property. Okay, so again, as you're watching videos, I'm just going to kind of read and go on. You are more than welcome to pause this video whenever you need to get the notes you need, so you could go at your own pace. All right. So since we know what physical is, that's basically what it looks like, what it smells like, what it tastes like, all the five senses. And then chemical, that is talking about the ability to combine or react with other things. Okay, so here we have some examples. A melting point. Well, we already talked about this with the copper. That's physical. Flammable. If something catches on fire, that is reacting. That is a chemical reaction. So that would be a chemical property. Density, that would be physical. Magnetic, that is actually physical. Okay, and then tarnishes in air. So tarnishes, it's like breaking down, another word for reacting. So that would be chemical. All right, so let's try. We are going to make a T-chart with at least 5 different properties for both physical and chemical of water. All right, so first let's think of physical. Well, let's think of the 5 sentences. What does it look like? Well, it's clear. It's a liquid at room temperature. It doesn't really have a taste. So that's what it looks like, what it tastes like, really what it feels like. Okay, we do know that it melts at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, so melting point. It boils at, well, that would be also 0 degrees Celsius. It boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Okay. So you can think of all sorts of other physical things like your density. If there's any other things that kind of explains what water looks like. All right, so let's go to chemical. So what do you know about water and what it reacts with? Have you ever heard of getting a grease fire in your kitchen? The one thing they tell you not to do is put water on it. And that is because water reacts with grease. Okay. Now, there's also a lot of things water does not react with. Water does not react with salt. So just because it does not react with something, that's still part of its chemical properties. So you could think of different things water reacts with, different things water does not react with. Those will all go under your chemical properties. All right.